banter between the Fourth Doctor, or Baked Dog, and Leela is continuing rounder of comfort and stability that leads into its heart of the story. It is, of course, the Talons of Weng Chiang. The Baked Dog is supporting the most lavish Holmesian outfit, I think designed by June Hudson, with a fragmenting sosh and a willingness that diverted towards hedonism. Music halls flourished, underlying the growing rift in class structure. I suppose there's a grudging respect here that goes to the set design department, who did a great job in adapting the Royal Theatre in Nottingham to reflect Jago's Palace Theatre. Most of the OB work was itself done in Wapping though, as Leela and Baked Dog are attacked, and it's one of the few instances where filming in the dark is used to good effect in Doctor Who. The ensuing scrap between the Baked Dog and several Chinese laundry workers from Limehouse area takes place. The Baked Dog and Leela find themselves sitting in the police station. The Baked Dog instills such force of will into the scene that we were all blown away. Played by John Bennett, Lee Seng Chang provides one of the most enigmatic performances of the story. And here we address the elephant of the room.
Oh!
The most racist of elements. Despite being examined by a gaggle of my contemporaries, we are given to a little exposition from the Baked Dog and Leela regarding the criminal gang, the Tong of the Black Scorpion. As they approach the mortuary in a quest to help the police in their inquiries, they chat incessantly, it seems, describing in the process the Chinese god Wang Chiang. We meet here in the morgue George Lightfoot,
the smell of gangrene would be terrible.
Sorry, mister.
Played by Trevor Baxter, with luscious aplomb. The way in which their transition and introduction is handled here is indicative of classic Who. Straight and to the point. Lightbulb explains that the body that has been found is not in fact a drowning case, but an attack by a rodent-like creature.
1,000 people freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
A good trick. And we find the revelation that the man was a cab driver we encountered at the start of the story looking for his wife. Baker's declaration at the pronouncement of rat hairs in the man's clothing is delivered with a kind of conviction we definitely don't see this kind of rounder. Baker does the Baked Dog so well in his cavalier attitude to almost getting his head cleaved off in half, turning slowly to address the henchman with a perfectly deadpan line of,
"Were you trying to attract my attention?"
As the Baked Dog follows the scent of the body, snatches down to the sewers and confronts an extremely large rat.
1,000 people freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
The effects of Roger Murray Leach were singularly unimpressive even when I was a child. They simply run away from the cuddly Ronan. We are taken to visit Casey and Jago again as they take it upon themselves to explore the cellar. They are confronted with the genuine big bad of the story, the terrible Chinese god Wang Chiang. The aspect of our new protagonist is always debatable, and it has been for years, but it's pretty much reached a consensus these days. But the Phantom of the Opera, suffice to say, was a deliberate and well-stylized choice for the renegade of Maslow's Grill, a renegade from the Time Agency, in fact. Yet another foundation anew who was utilised and perverted in my humble.
That's it. I'm going to write that novel.
Now it is further postulated that the cabbie, Buller, was stabbed by a midget. Pieces of the puzzle start to formulate.
I can diagnose perfectly well simply through conversation.
The Baked Dog gets out of the handsome cab they have acquired at what looks like St James's Park, but is in fact Cambridge Park in Twickenham. As Lee Seng Chang and Grill look for the missing time cab in a hansom, with the crystalline lattice key to guide them, they come upon Lightbulb's house where the cabinet rests.
Well, it's beautiful.
Back at the theatre, and the Baked Dog, Jay and the Baked Dog are having tremendous trouble looking for the secret entrance to Grill's Lane. We get another ref to the Phantom of the Opera illusions in the presentation the Baked Dog gives gives chase through the upper wings to the theatre. The chase is evidently unsuccessful, but it does give Greel a bit of gripping stuff towards an imminent cliffhanger. We have numerous dwarf-like antagonists in Pelly Dreadfuls, and copious ones in popular detective fiction of the time. This is part of the genius of classic Who. Nothing is spelled out to the viewer. It was always assumed that the audience had a brain in their head. Now, it's iconic that Greel uses the medical advances of his time, as that is exactly what medical specialists then were trying to do.
To us!
People like Burke and Hare in Edinburgh were harvesting dead bodies on which to experiment, selling them to surgeons who could pay the most. Yet again, the very Sherlockian sequence that reflects the similarities between the two and their occasional behaviour. It is here. Another course of humour is injected into the dialogue as the Baked-Off refers to his fishing the Thames with the venerable Bede. Sewers were of an appalling nature at this time, petrifying food and feces were affluent, and contributed greatly to the unhealthy nature of the town.
Well, that's good.
Perhaps this was part of the impression that was being given off, as things have been kicking off surrounding the control concerning white slave trade. More white slavery shenanigans were suspected when Li Sen Chang consults his master Greel in the sewer hideaway and tells him of Leela's substitution of herself. All this truffle leaving Leela striding the hopeless confidence away from the giant rat.
I don't see there's anything very funny about it.
The character of Sherlock Holmes was created in the wake of social unrest and technological change in the middle classes. Leela's representation here as Eliza Doolittle of the story is highlighted by Lightbulb having purchased some theatre togs for her and her excitement at receiving them. The Baked-Off is proud to announce his intent to take Leela to the theatre as he gazes pridefully at how good she has turned out in her new dress.
And if you're very good, I'll buy you an orange.
Props to John Bennett. His is the degradation with which Li Sen Chang finds his soul upon the desperation the Baked-Off discovers him, and we find a bit more backstory behind the discontented magician. We have to stop here again and consider the accusations of racism. Let me consider this. And this is the very point. It satirises the whole trope of Victorian England. It doesn't highlight the point. The whole thing is a satire. It's a satire well conducted and well put together. This is why people get it wrong, because they don't see the satire. Satire is almost invisible these days.
It come through the wall, it said its piece, and then it sodded off.
Michael Spice as Magnus Greel was fantastic and displays voice work to compete with Gabriel Wolfe as Sutek in the previous season, although in this story it was his second outing in Doctor Who, as he also provided the voice for Morbius in the previous season's The Brain of Morbius. The melodrama does not and did not die with the advent of the new century, and it is used in copious amounts here, with the realization that the episode was actually written by Robert Holmes and not Robert Stuart Banks, who only wrote the original story outline. We see Jago talking to himself and postulating ideas in the abandoned cellar of the palace. A character that comes into further fruition 35 years later in the Big Finish audio of the Jago and Lightfoot series. Now, if you haven't listened to any, I highly recommend you eardrum them ASAP. The sound bites of Chris Benjamin and Trev Baxter are not to be missed. Snippets of Raffles and Sherlock Holmes again creep into the consciousness and add a unique aura to the shadows. And the director, David Maloney, actually managed to get the light toned down, enigmatically sitting cross-legged behind him. The Baked-Off turns to see Li Sen Chang inform us that Greel is hanging out at the House of the Dragon, not far away. There is a lot of spiritual talk of joining his ancestors when he passes over.
Either I think of an idea or tomorrow we meet our maker. In my case, God. In your case, God knows. But I'd be surprised if he's won any design awards.
It appears that there was a conspiracy planned to kill Queen Victoria at the performance of Weing Chiang was to give. The story strand in circumventing historical peoples or events seems to be a very popular resort in Doctor Who. Indeed, it seems seen many times over the years. The killing Queen Vic is particularly in vogue. A trend of real-life murder that stalks our streaming networks even today. Depressing, isn't it? Bagdog decides to wait for Greel to turn up at the place. Exposition is the order of events in this scene, and it is all finally spelled out for.
It's the worst plan since Abraham Lincoln said, "Oh, I'm sick of kicking around the house tonight. Let's go take in a show."
With the first full-on allusion to the Phantom of the Opera reveal as Leela tears off the mask of Greel, and the BBC Special Effects Department and the writers did themselves a spectacular job here. Now, frankly, anyone sensitive to such material should remember there are far more pressing threats to cultural injustice than a few actors dressing up and plying their trade whilst having a magnificent fun time. Although such a travesty is compensated by the big dog's fatuous comment as he sits down, surprised but totally unfazed, and says,
Life's full of little surprises.
The baked dog undergoes an expunging of a dump-in exposition, establishing the failure in the time experience of Greel and sacrifices the villainous masked maniac feels he has made. The whole experiment represents a huge plot contrivance that has paid off in so many a story before. Fortunately for Bob Holmes and Hinchy, this particular contrivance is always a good one. Like Colin Baker's era, criticisms of excessive violence were aimed at the Hinchy era as well. Now, do we consider that with this being the last of the Hinchy stories and Doug Maloney taking over from the next season, this is the last of extreme accusations of such? It can very easily be argued that the horror of Fang Rock, the image of the Fendal, and the Sunmakers had just as much violence to their credit. Now, I must say, the manic performance of Michael Spice as Magnus Greel in the sequence where he prides himself with the time machine, the culmination of the Zigma experiments, is close to awesome in its grand banal melodrama. Now, Fu Manchu rearing its stem-like plot strands again, methinks. Like Davros before him, Greel is insistent on getting information from the bake dog. The music halls and their eccentric business resound unquaveringly throughout this story, so much so that it reflects the very beginnings of the genre. The bake dog speeds out of hiding and throws Greel into his own energy-sapping MacGuffin thingy. I must mention at this point Deep Roy. It's been a terrible oversight of mine not to mention his magnificent performance before now as Mr. Sin, the homunculus. The ending sequence adopts the mantle of Henry Higgins to Leela's Doolittle is delightful. The night shoot was a topping success in its conception, and this most recent comic interlude sets our dour mood to the appreciation of a story well told. The Talons of Weng Chiang remains to this day not so much a period piece of exceptional splendour for Doctor Who, but more than that, it's exhibited beyond the spectacle of literary illusions, a glimpse of a dead art form that transformed entertainment and through its darkness brightened the streets of London for a time, ever so slightly. But to reflect upon such a phenomenon, it is necessary to remember that to give any man an inch, he will eventually take a mile, unless kept in check by better men. A system which created the music halls will not cut the mustard in the long term. In summation, what we are looking for is an antitoxin, so to speak, a compound to inject into society's immune system to fight the virus of hedonism which we're experiencing today at its source.
Well, that's good.
But the problem in such a serum does not exist without hurting the population. Perhaps we need Dr. Jekyll to knock us all off a batch of the good stuff. Give us a good clicking, guys. I'll see you later.
Shakanaka.